Hello and welcome to the Doofcast, the official variety podcast of doofmedia.com. My name is Scott Daly, one of 10 separate identities that makes up the person that is Doof Media.
And I am the Beast. You are impure.
Craig Matthew Freeman.
What? Where am I?
We're in the studio. We're doing the podcast. You know what? Just give me the light.
Is this 2016?
This week on the show, we are continuing our Deconstructing Director series with our penultimate entry in the discussion of M. Night Shyamalan and his films, 2016's Split. This is one I've been looking forward to for a long time, Matt, and it's finally here. Finally a movie that most people think is good, so I don't have to be worried about people being mad about my opinions.
Yeah, and this was, of course, one that I had not seen until this week.
Which is the first one in this series, right?
That is correct, yes, up until this point. And, I don't even have a good excuse. I'm a pretty big fan of Shyamalan. It's just at a certain point in my life, I stopped being able to go to theaters as often. And
yeah.
And so I just missed this one. And finally got a chance to see it.
Well, that's what this project is all about. I mean, not really, but it's the added benefit of this project.
Yeah, right.
So we're going to be diving deep into Split. This will be a full spoilers discussion of the movie. So if you have not seen it, please go do that. Seriously.
Yeah.
Especially, I mean, there's a twist at the end of this. We'll get to it. So we're going to talk about Split, and then we're going to wrap up this week with talking about the future of movies, because it's here, and it's scary.
That'll be fun.
Yeah, we're going to be talking all about how James Dean is apparently returning from the dead to star in a movie about Vietnam, a war that was not around when he died.
Yeah, that makes just every possible bit of sense.
Yeah.
We'll get there.
Yeah. All right, so let's just do it. It's Split time. Let's talk about M. Night Shyamalan's Split.
What are we doing here? What the hell is going on?
I was sent to get you for a reason.
Open the door! No! There's a flower on the pillows, a flower in the bathroom. Like, we're important.
The only chance we have is if all three of us go crazy on this guy.
Who is that? Maybe she can help us.
We're here! Help us! We're in here!
Don't worry. He's not allowed to touch you. He knows what you're here for. He listens to me.
All right, Matt, what is this movie about?
3 girls are kidnapped by a man with a diagnosed 23 distinct personalities. It's not even correct English, IMDb. They must try to escape before the apparent emergence of a frightful new 24th.
Ooh. Yeah. So, man, where to start on this one? There's a lot to say. I guess I kind of want to start at the end with you, Matt. I kind of want to get this out of the way first before we really dive into the movie. Because I think, as you said, it's kind of a distraction, maybe, arguably, to what this movie is talking about.
Yeah.
I want to talk about the twist ending.
Yeah, and the thing is, I was spoiled on that, and I'm almost glad that I was, because if I hadn't been, then I would have walked away from the movie saying, "Oh my God, I can't believe it! They're in the same universe." Mm-hmm. As it was, I was just like, "Yep." Now I can just think about the movie that I just saw. Right.
Yeah. So the big surprise ending at the end of this movie is that Split takes place in the same universe as M. Night Shyamalan's second film, Unbreakable. And that is where, of course, the third film in this trilogy, Glass, comes in, which we will get to after this one. But yeah, I mean, that's the first thing I wanted to ask you, was just about, I guess it just became like through cultural osmosis, right? Like the existence of Glass as a movie spoiled this twist in this movie, right?
Mm-hmm. See, honestly, I was mistakenly expecting Bruce Willis to show up and actually save the girl or girls at the end of the movie. Like that's what I thought the spoiler was. And so in a sense, I was pleasantly surprised that the plot resolves itself 100% and it's really just a stinger.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that was actually kind of nice.
Yeah, I mean, it could have, and I think the plan around doing it that way was if this movie tanked for some reason, well, they didn't build up anything. You could just say, "Yep, same world, hooray!"
Yeah.
But of course, this movie did very, very well, and that is why Glass is around. But yeah, I mean, I just like, this is one of those things that like nobody was expecting. I remember this movie played Fantastic Fest. I unfortunately did not get to see it because this was back when I did not get the badge at Fantastic Fest that allowed me to get into whatever I want. And it's actually because I missed this movie at the festival that I started paying the extra $200 a year to get that super fan badge to be able to not miss something like this, because apparently like it floored everyone in the theater, and then Shyamalan was there and they had like a 45-minute Q&A where he's just talking about storytelling and filmmaking. It's like once in a lifetime experience that I missed. But one of the things he did with them is like, please don't tell anyone about the hidden connection at the end. And, you know, credit to the attendees at Fantastic Fest 2016, they did not do that. I walked into this movie, which came out, I think, 4 months later. It came out in January or February, and I had no idea. And then that music picks up at the very end when the Horde is talking in the mirror, which is a beautiful scene that we'll probably talk about. And then that Unbreakable music comes in, and you're just like, what? Hold on. Wait a minute. Like, the fun thing for me is like I didn't even notice it because it had been a while since I had watched Unbreakable. So it wasn't until like halfway into the music that I was like, man, I really recognize this from somewhere. And then we cut over to the diner scene, and there's our boy Bruce Willis.
I didn't recognize the music, so I'm glad you were able to point that out.
Yeah. I think it works really well. And I think it works exactly because of what you said, where it's really not, this is not an Unbreakable movie. This is its entirely own thing. David Dunn does nothing in this film. And I think that's absolutely by design.
Right. The only, it works in the sense that you're like, okay, I can fully accept that these two supernatural people exist in the same world, because they both seem to be sort of reasonable. Like, it's not Marvel, right? Nobody's shooting laser blasts out of their hands. It's like just a little bit beyond what you could believe of a normal person. Which I haven't seen Glass either. I should mention, and I've heard some. I don't know if they're real spoilers or not, but I've heard like indications that part of that movie is even like about the idea that there's some doubt as to whether it's even real. I don't know. I don't want to talk about that because I haven't seen it, but
sure.
But like that's what's fun about this. And this movie too, it's kind of fun. The idea that for most of the movie, you think that he might just be making all of this up, and there's no real evidence that there's any supernatural component to it.
Yeah, and I really want to focus on that a little bit as we go through this conversation, because one of the biggest critiques of this movie is that it paints a very inaccurate depiction of what dissociative identity disorder actually looks like, which is 100% true. But I think it is doing something very specific with that. So, but before we get into all that, let's wrap up the spoiler twist section part by putting that aside, and then putting aside the Unbreakable universe. We'll get to that when we talk about Glass. Let's just really focus on this movie. And so one of the things, I don't know if people listening to this know, but one of the things Matt and I normally do is we have pretty extensive conversations with each other before we hit the play button about these movies, either via, group messaging or just like talking on the mics before we actually hit play and start recording. We usually talk through the movies, but for some reason with this one, I really didn't want to do that. I really wanted to hit record and just get your take on this movie. So I have no idea what you thought about this movie, Matt. So let's start with that. Let's start getting into the movie proper by talking about that. What did you think of Split?
Well, I love that it was actually better than I was expecting, which I guess is saying something, since I really do love Shyamalan and think he's a great storyteller. I think that what was better than I was expecting was probably had a lot to do with how it looked.
Sure.
I'm going to say McElroy 100 times, but McAvoy was great, like just perfect. I kind of, for some reason, expected that to be a little bit more wobbly than it was. It just seems like such a hard thing to do, but that element of the story worked perfectly. The cinematography, the colors, the the lighting, the shots. There's so many great shots in this movie that it's just chock full of these fantastic shots where some of them being classic Shyamalan ones, like where it'll be through a window. There's a lot of like there's somewhere there's like the round window in one of the doors in his dwelling. Where you can the camera is always taking advantage of windows, taking advantage of like clipping parts of people off. There's a great shot where it's like just showing the beast like from the nose down, basically. You can't really see his eyes. There's a lot of really memorable shots. There's so many different things to talk about that's just the kind of thing that stands out to me as like, I was expecting the storytelling to be great. I was expecting the acting to be good. How the movie looked was actually what surprised me. So.
Yeah, I have not seen a Shyamalan movie shot this well since The Sixth Sense, honestly.
Yeah,
like I think
I agree.
And it's funny because we were talking about it. I was like, man, this movie looks really familiar to me. It looks really familiar. And so before we started recording, I pulled up IMDb just to see who the director of photography was. And now I'm blanking on his name, but it's the same guy who did, it is Michael Giolakis, who also did this year's Us and did 2014's It Follows. And I think after I saw this, I read that basically what happened is Knight saw It Follows and said, I want that. I want that look. I want that feel. And that is a movie that has a very specific style, a very specific kind of way it's lit and shot, and this movie feels a lot like that. I completely agree with you that it is just a beautifully shot movie. Like it feels to me, and the narrative on this movie in the press was, he's back, baby, right? Like if The Visit was like him doing a pretty decent movie that got people interested in him again, this movie blew up. This was hugely successful. I think he financed this movie all by himself. And I'm pulling up the box office mojo right now because I'm really curious because
it says the Wikipedia says budget was 9 million, box office was 278 million.
Yeah. I mean, they're ridiculous.
So the dude's doing all right.
Yeah. So this is him like exploding onto the scene once again. And it really feels like, and I know that's a narrative, but to me, it really feels like a movie in which he's taken everything he's learned over his entire career and put them together. There's parts of this movie that remind me of some of the shots he made happen in The Visit. There's parts of this movie that remind me of Sixth Sense. There's parts of this movie that like, it just feels like a movie that's shot and written to be kind of the culmination of a career, in ways that I think it succeeds amazingly.
Yeah, I think, one way to say that is this is just a signal of everything that he's learned up to this point with all these other films he's made.
Absolutely.
And, a lot more kind of control and discipline than we've seen. And, like I've said before, like I love it when he gets weird. I love The Village. I love Lady in the Water. But I think maybe this is a stretch because I haven't seen Glass yet. Or yeah, right. But it seems like his instincts have matured to the point where he can do his weird thing. Like the premise of this movie is weird. The conceit is weird, but he can do it in a way where you just kind of swallow it whole. You buy it. It works for you.
Yeah, and I think this movie is still true to his B-movie roots, right? I mean, this is very much B-movie idea, but elevated with beautiful cinematography. That is, I mean, that's what The Sixth Sense was. I really think that's true, and that is his lane. And he's experimented, and we've loved most of the stuff he's done, but this is comfortable Night. Like I think after some of his Rocky movies in the past, he kind of was trying to do different things. Maybe he got off his game a little bit, was a little worried about thinking he lost it or something. This is a movie that feels like a director that is comfortable, that knows exactly what he wants, knows how he wants to do it, and it just is an assured movie. It knows what it's about, it knows what it wants to say, and it knows how it wants to visualize that whole narrative. And man, it's such a good movie.
Yeah. So this feels related, although it's probably ridiculous that I'm making this connection. But I felt like this was Shyamalan's best performance in the movie.
He says 2 sentences.
But it's hilarious.
It
like
is.
He's like self-deprecating and just kind of like looks schlubby. Like there's no effort to make him seem cool in that scene. He's just completely secondary to the to the psychologist character.
Yeah, I mean he's defending Hooters.
yeah, he's defending Hooters and his habit of eating greasy chicken wings. Yeah, and it's like that to me. Again, this is probably reading way into it, but like the fact that he took that role is a kind of like ego, like pride swallowing move. Like, because in the past, whenever he's been in the movie, he's been in some kind of mode where it's like foreboding and important. Usually,
sure.
In this movie, he's just this guy talking about Hooters, and then and it's like it almost is like a sign that his ego has deflated just a little bit, enough that he can control the film better overall.
No, I think that's a really good point, because thinking back on his movies, you're absolutely right. I mean, in Signs, he's the guy that's responsible for killing the wife. In Lady in the Water, he literally casts himself as the most important man in the world.
Yeah.
and
he's this harbinger of the horrors of the world in the village.
Yeah. And then, a few years later, what is he in this movie? What is his role in this movie? He checks out the cameras.
He's not even trying to make himself look like good. Like he looks terrible in the movie, right? And he's the director. He could make himself look awesome if he wanted to.
Right.
So yeah, I see that as like an indication of like he's putting the story first. He's putting the movie first before everything else.
Yeah. All right. So it's so difficult to approach movies like this because I want to talk about everything.
Yeah.
But I mean, I guess we should start with the story. That makes sense, right? Mm-hmm. The basic plot here is this idea that there's this girl played by Anna Taylor-Joy who does just a fantastic job. Actually, I think all 3 of the girls are pretty good. Haley Lou Richardson is an actress that I really like, that's been in a lot of movies that I've really, really, really enjoyed. She plays the one in the sweater. I don't remember the other 2 girls' name, which is probably not good, but she plays Claire.
So that's one thing we can talk about. Like the movie really, this isn't a criticism. It's just kind of an observation that the movie does not really try to spend a lot of energy characterizing the 3 girls. It definitely focuses mostly on the character Casey Cook, the main character.
I think she's pretty well characterized. I mean, it's the whole movie's about her experience.
I think she's pretty well characterized. I think the other 2, it just doesn't really care to. Like I don't feel like it tried to and didn't succeed. I just feel like that wasn't a priority of the movie.
No, I don't think it actually cared about who they were, outside of very superficial observations. Like I think that one of the great things about them is we meet them, they've invited her out of pity, but they're still kind of kind. Like they want to leave, but their dad makes them take her home with them, but like they're not terrible people.
Yeah,
they're just standard girls, and I really like the scene in the car was really our very brief setup before the inciting incident of the movie happens. I love the scene of them 2 in the back seat, like just completely in their own world, and the only one that is noticing anything going on is Casey, because she's kind of separate and removed from them, both physically by being in the front seat and metaphorically as well. Yeah, and I think that's a great touch, because like that, just like that added element of James McAvoy gets in the car and they don't notice. Like she notices before his daughter.
Right. Well, I think that's kind of the great thing is, while it doesn't spend a lot of energy characterizing them, I think it does give you a pretty good sense of the differences between them.
Yeah.
But like I think that's the main mode by which it operates, is by contrasts, because like you just pointed out, she's immediately aware that something's wrong, because in her life is one of like suffering and having to be on alert all the time. So she notices immediately. They don't notice forever, because their life is one of comfort where this kind of thing never happens. They get into they're put in the cell, and the other 2 just can't accept this is happening for like they're almost trying to like talk their way out of it, or try to escape in ways that seem very premature. And her instincts are like, keep your head down, like be quiet. I'm not gonna try to rush him. Like that's not gonna work, obviously. And so yeah, like it spends so much energy describing her, the film does, that it can almost be more efficient by describing how they are just by how they're different to her.
I completely agree with that. And I think that it's such an important characterization of Casey, because one of the things we see at the very beginning is they're like, let's all get together. Let's jump him. The three of us can take him. And she's just like, no, we can't. Like, she's just like, that's not the way this works. And then later in the movie, we see kind of where that mentality comes from, where after her uncle did God knows what to her. Thank God the movie doesn't actually focus on that. We just see just enough of it to know it's sickening and disgusting. She pulls a shotgun on him, but doesn't pull the trigger.
Yeah.
And so we see Casey as this person who has just been trapped in this cycle of abuse. And every time she's tried to stand up against it, it's failed. And so she's just kind of given up and resigned herself. That's like, we get little hints, like she's, gets into tension a lot, yells at her teachers a lot. And it's literally just because she's trying to get away. She just wants to be away from everything. And so she's intentionally getting in trouble to be away from her uncle.
Just to briefly touch on that, like I found that to be the most upsetting part of the movie. Like, even from the beginning, when we started getting the flashbacks, there was like this tone to it where I was like, oh, this is going to be horrible, whatever it is. And like, you immediately start thinking like, okay, what could happen here? Like, we've got guns. I was actually thinking like either her father or her uncle were going to get killed and it was going to be her fault or something like that. And like, what ends up happening, if anything, it's like worse than anything I was imagining. And I was just like, this sucks. Like, I found it very like genuinely upsetting in my soul.
And I think those scenes are so fascinating to me, because I completely agree with you that like from the instant we go to like the opening scene of these flashback scenes is the three of them sitting around a dinner table at a restaurant talking about hunting, right?
Yeah.
Which has it has a certain connotation to it, but it's also like a family scene in public. Everyone seems happy, and yet there's just ominousness. And I just think it's the way the scene is framed. Mm-hmm. Like, I think when we're in these flashbacks, we're in the eye line of young Casey a lot. So the uncle is always like top of the frame, like we're looking up at him. He's a big guy, the actor they got for this guy. He's very big. He's a very imposing person. And he's just like, he fills the frame and he's overpowering. And like the first thing they established that is he's going buck crazy, which is just an ominous thing. Like, I don't know, like I didn't know it was going to happen either the first time I saw it, but I felt like it was going to be something to do with this guy. The movie is so smart and subtle with how it reinforces this over time. Like, he's always handing his brother beer. And like, it never comments on that, but like every time they're in a scene together, he's like handing him a beer. And I don't like, there's not anything explicit in that, but it's just like, you're with your kid and you're like, I just feel like it's weird to just constantly be handed beer, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Right. I mean, he's trying to get him out of the picture.
Right. Right.
Yeah. It almost feels like worse of a betrayal, because I didn't read anything creepy into the uncle necessarily. Like, this is the first time I've seen the movie, so I can tell you with my fresh eyes, I didn't feel like he was playing him as creepy up until the scene where you realize that he's a disgusting monster. So for me, that felt like another layer of betrayal, where I was like, oh, this, like, I kind of thought maybe the dad was going to be the one who did something if something like that happened, because he seemed a little bit more edgy. He seemed to have this like weird fervor around hunting that was borderline disturbing. But no, he's not the one who does anything wrong, really. Yeah, I don't know. It was very, very, really small part of the movie, but obviously it's what frames everything else. And I found it, I mean, frankly, more upsetting than the beast eating people later, because that's, a monster eating people is unrealistic, and you can't quite believe that it's a real thing that could happen, and so it doesn't hit quite as hard.
Right, yeah. So getting with the girls, though, I want to talk to you about layers and vulnerability. Because one of the things I noticed, especially this watch for this podcast, the idea of clothes as layers is really prevalent.
Yeah.
Because one of the things we see is that for both Marcia and Claire, the two other girls, they have elements of their clothing removed systematically throughout the movie. And they really only have one layer, and then they're exposed. Like Claire is forced to take off her sweater when she gets it dirty, and then she's in her underwear. Marcia is forced to take off her skirt, and then she's in her underwear. But Casey is like seriously layered. Like, and her layers are slowly peeled back over the course of the movie. It's like I think there's I forget what the top layer is, but she's got, I think it's like a plaid shirt, and then she's got like a sweater underneath it, and then a long sleeve shirt underneath that, and then by the end we're just in like a tank, and then of course when we see her self-inflicted wounds that she's doing to herself. Or I mean, actually, did you think that was self-inflicted?
Yeah,
as I say that was my read, but
my read was that it was self-harm in response to the abuse. It doesn't actually matter too much. The point is it's a manifestation of the fact that her life has been full of suffering. So
right. But I just like this idea that like skin of these girls is exposed throughout the story, and the story has kind of set up a reason for this with the character of Dennis being like a creep. Yeah, but I mean that it is. First of all, the movie never sexualizes any of these women outside of what Dennis is doing, which is good. Thank you, movie. Thank you, Knight, for not doing that. So, like, it's not like removing Claire's shirt is sexualized in any way. In fact, it's just gross and horrifying. But they have so many less layers on, and they are exposed so much sooner. And that exposed skin is, I mean, they're young, they're girls, right? So they're young. They don't have blemishes, whereas Casey's skin is like horribly destroyed because of what she's done, and also it just takes so many more layers to get there. And I just like symbolically, I think that's just like a beautiful visual cue of the movie that I didn't even think about the first time I saw it.
Yeah, you're exactly right. That's true, and definitely, you know, the camera is not male gazing on the women, even though they're in their underwear for a large part of the movie. Like at no point does it feel prurient. It's absolutely not doing that. And I agree that I appreciate that, because that would have been weird and totally ruined the effect of. I mean, especially because the whole point of that is like, oh, he's pretending that he wants them to take their clothes off because of his OCD. Yeah, but clearly he just is a perv and wants them to take their clothes off so he can look at them.
It's so gross. But it's gross in a way that works really well in the movie, because I mean, I guess we're going to talk about McAvoy a lot, because we have a lot to say about his performance, because it is literally brilliant. It should have been nominated for something, because he plays like 6 different characters, and then he plays characters playing characters, which is something I want to talk about too.
Yeah.
And then, but like, the way we learn about, so we meet Dennis first, right? Dennis is the first one we meet. We don't really know what's going on. Maybe if we watched the trailer, we knew this was like a multiple personality thing, but we meet Dennis, and he's of course the creepy one. So he's the one that would have kidnapped these girls to do exactly what they and we, the audience, were expecting to happen. And then it kind of just slow rolls out from there, because then we meet Barry, or who we think is Barry, and then we meet Patricia after that. And it's not really until we meet Patricia that we start to be like, wait a minute.
Yeah.
Because, and I think that's kind of smart, because like, you could argue that Dennis and Barry, like the way the movie plays kind of fast and loose with who these people are, like you could be like, oh, it's just one guy and he's just dressed a little differently to meet the psychiatrist, but then Patricia is so different that we're forced to recognize what is going on here. And I appreciate how the movie handled that. It's not like a reveal, but for the movie to like show you what the conceit of the movie is going to be in interesting ways, I really liked it.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, as the movie goes on, your sense of what may be happening and what is actually happening becomes clearer and clearer.
Sure.
And so much of that, I think, is definitely the performance. Like just the fact that the way McAvoy can change his like face and posture his face does so much of the work. Like if you just look at a picture of him when he's being Dennis versus when he's being Hedwig, it's like a different person. Like the expression, the hardness, the maturity that's conveyed through just the way he's looking at you. Not to mention, of course, the way he moves, the way his posture is held. Like you have no trouble flipping into the mindset where like, oh, now we're looking at Dennis. Now we're looking at Hedwig. Like these are different actual characters in the movie. You forget that you're watching one actor shift between these people. It's really, really quite something.
It is remarkable. I mean, it is truly remarkable. Like I watched this movie twice in preparation for this show, and the second time I was less concerned about like reminding myself of all the plot stuff, and I just kind of watched McAvoy. Damn it, McAvoy! I did it. I did what you were gonna do. And I think one of the things that the movie smartly does is it knows exactly what it's doing, and it knows what kind of performance it has. Because this, like, Shyamalan is a director that throughout a lot of what we've done, he's a director that doesn't like close-ups that often. He just doesn't like to do them very much. He likes the medium shot. I mean, if you look back at Signs and you see how much of that movie is mediums, it's a lot of medium shot. There's a lot of multiple people in the frame at the same time. That is not the case in this movie. This movie is a lot of close-ups. It is a lot of close-ups with very shallow focus, meaning anything like inches behind where the characters are standing is out of focus. Mm-hmm. So each character fills up the frame, and rarely do they share frames together. It's always focused on their faces. A lot of times the characters are put right square in the middle of the frame. Sometimes they even look right into the lens, which is unusual. But I think what this does is really help us capture exactly what McAvoy is doing, because you're right. I mean, it's a full body performance. It's his posture. It's his face. He transforms. He literally transforms into these characters. It's remarkable. There's that scene at the end where she says Kevin Wendell Crumb, and then he's like cycling through the characters. And just like you see it happen. You see it happen in front of your eyes. And it's not just the accents he's putting on. I think the most telling part of this is when he turns into Patricia at the end. And before he's even said anything, you know who he is now. Yeah. Just like the way his back straightens. He's got the towel draped around his arms. The way he like pulls it straight, pulls it over his chest a little bit more. And just transform. It's remarkable. It really is. I can't. Yeah. I like... Even if you didn't like the story of this movie, I think just his performance is worth the cost of entry.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, again, having just seen it for the first time, I can confirm there's no moment when you're not sure who he's being.
Yeah.
Even when it's just body language, like you said. Like maybe that one was one of the harder ones to pick out for like 2 seconds until like you said, you take in the posture, and then he does the thing with the towel, and the thing with the towel is like, oh yeah, that's not something that any of the others would care about, but I believe that Patricia totally would. So
yeah, but the movie is structured to where it doesn't want to confuse you, right? Like, I mean, each of the characters does have a specific accent, or like a lisp or a speech impediment to them, whatever. They do dress distinctly. So like the movie it's not setting out to confuse you with this. It wants you to know who it is, but it's also not afraid to challenge that. Like I can't imagine this with a different actor. I really can't. Like someone with even a bit less skill, and this movie doesn't work.
Yeah. It's great. Yeah. Other than to say, I agree that even if the movie wasn't great, the performance by itself is worth the watch. I don't know what else to say beyond that about how great it is.
And I think this is one of the things, I think we read this in a Film Crit Hulk essay years and years ago about the movie, the Edgar Wright movie, The World's End.
Yeah.
Where Simon Pegg is playing a character who is pretending to be something else. So he's a character who is an alcoholic that is like pretending to be fine.
Yeah.
And like talking about the challenge, when you get into what is the most challenging kind of acting, the most challenging kind of acting is when you're having to act as if you're a person who is lying about who they are.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what we get here in the whole Dennis pretending to be Barry moments of the story. So he's going to the psychiatrist. I love this plot because it's like one of them is grabbing the light and emailing the shrink and being like, help.
Yeah.
And then so he has to keep, and I think he goes like 4 times, right? Something ridiculous, or 3 or 4 times he has to go like smooth things over and be like, yeah, I know I said it was an emergency, but it's fine.
I'm just feeling overwhelmed.
And the thing about it is it has to be so subtle, but like we've never actually met Barry, right? So the movie can't trust our ability to see something's wrong here. It has to telegraph it and then use the characters in the movie to kind of hint that towards us. And I think that's a line you have to skirt there. And I just think it does a really beautiful job with it.
Yeah, I think a lot of that is the screenwriting just as much as it is the acting, because like the like Barry kind of seems like a caricature of Barry, even though you've never met Barry. Like they seem so monomaniacally focused on their drawings. It's like a real person wouldn't behave this way. Like they'd have more dimensions to them. And then I think the only time we really see Barry is on a short clip of video on the computer later. And then that's basically a confirmation, because the Barry in that video is, I guess, just like more nuanced, and it has other concerns and just seems a lot more relaxed in their skin. And it is slightly different. You can notice it's slightly different. I think that's fantastic.
Yeah, and I mean, of course, there's the visual cues with him having the handkerchief and kind of like OCD touching everything. But there's more subtle stuff than that, because if you look at it, like you can see the Dennisisms come through, because his Dennis performance has this kind of like grunt, this like exasperated like grunt that he makes, and you see that come through in Barry, and like that's not something that probably you wouldn't even notice, because you don't even know if that's not a Barryism. But like I feel like I've seen this movie so many times, and you start to like, oh, this is a little bit of betrayal of who he's pretending to be.
Yeah, I'd have to watch the movie twice to catch stuff like that, I think, because I wasn't really sure what was going on in the first part of the movie.
Sure.
But yeah, that sounds reasonable to me.
So how do you feel about the idea present here? Like, and how the movie it really explores the idea of, hey, people with dissociative identity disorder, the brain is so powerful that it can literally change them.
I mean, it's kind of a fun sci-fi idea, but
yeah,
but really it's a symbol for the idea that trauma can be so powerful that it can make you
different.
Yeah, different, right? Because what the Beast believes is that trauma can make you powerful, and maybe that's true. Maybe that is the point of the movie. But at least it can make you different. It does make you different. It does set you apart. It evidently does. I mean, she is different. She is set apart. Not in a good way. You could argue that it gives her power, because it gives her the power to survive. She's the one who she almost defeats him, and then in the end she literally defeats him directly due to the fact that she's been traumatized.
Yeah. And I kind of want to explore that, because one of the big critiques of this movie when it came out was this idea that Shyamalan is telling people that trauma is good because it makes you stronger. And I don't really agree that that's like the message of the movie, but I wanted to unpack that specifically though, because certainly there is this concept, certainly that is what the Beast believes, right? That is stated in the movie. That is what the Beast believes. Like, the unclean are people that haven't experienced pain, so they don't know what it's like. They're too soft. They haven't experienced pain, and I'm going to prove that by, first of all, existing. My existence proves that pain gives you power, and by killing these people. But I mean, one of the things that like I don't know, because I mean, I think it's certainly true that surviving terrible things can make you a stronger person. Like getting through awful things can make you a stronger person. But I don't think the message of the movie is like, so therefore trauma is good.
Well, you can't ignore the fact that the Beast is a monster.
Sure.
A homicidal maniac
right.
who eats people. Like like no analysis of this movie says trauma is good is complete unless you can substantiate why it's good that he became a horrible man-eating monster. He survived, and it made him stronger, but it made him into a predator, right?
Yeah.
Made him into something awful, made him into something evil. And so you could say trauma does make you stronger, but stronger is sort of neutral, right? Stronger can make you into a stronger monster. It can also make you into a stronger survivor.
Yeah.
It's kind of up to you which one of those what path you choose to take if you are in that situation. If you're someone who is struggling with something, are you going to use that struggle and let it turn you into someone who gains strength, whatever that looks like, and then uses it against people, or are you going to use it to make yourself stronger and protect yourself and others? That's my riff there. I think I definitely don't think that you can just say, oh, trauma makes the beast stronger, therefore the movie thinks that it's good. That's a massive leap, and it's not really supported.
Right. And I think the arc of Casey throughout this movie is an arc of a person who was completely paralyzed by her trauma to a person who fights back against it. Like, yes, she is, like, at the end of the movie, what stops the beast from killing her is not an active choice of hers. But I think her moment is when she's standing in that hallway, she's got the gun raised again, and we match cut back to that same moment in the forest when she could have shot her abusive uncle and chose not to do it, and then was stuck in this cycle, and this time she pulls the trigger, and we kind of see that confirmed at the end of the movie when she gets into the cop car and they're like, your uncle's here, do you want to go with him? And she stays where she is. She is not going to fall back into that cycle. She's going to get out of this cycle of trauma she's in. That is her evolution, right? And it is specifically because she learns to fight back against this kind of stuff. So
yeah,
I definitely agree with you that trauma good is I have a very hard time reading this movie in that kind of way.
No.
So I'm glad we agree on that.
Because you could just as easily say Shyamalan is being irresponsible because he's implying that trauma turns you into a cannibal. It's like, okay, if you can make both of those readings by being sufficiently shallow, then perhaps you need to be a little bit more comprehensive in your analysis.
Yeah. I mean, that does bring up an interesting point, though, something that I guess it's movie adjacent, like the idea of using dissociative identity disorder in this way. And obviously, this is a fictional movie. This is not how this disorder actually works and functions in any way. But do you think the one critique that I have a hard time just dismissing out of hand is this idea that you took a real disorder and then layered this fantasy element on top of it in a way that could be irresponsible?
Yeah, I don't want to dismiss anything out of hand either. I can't immediately see the harm in it. I'm not saying that means there isn't any. Mm-hmm. To me, like I always try to connect things to different, like map things onto different situations or analogies, and then say, okay, in this situation, is there any evident issue? So the first thing that occurred to me was something really innocuous and obviously less like inflammatory, which would be just like myopia. Like, okay, people who need glasses, there's a certain experience of having myopia and needing to wear glasses and having to deal with the mild inconvenience of having to wear glasses. What if there was a movie where the movie insinuated that if you are sufficiently myopic, then you can shoot lasers out of your eyes? Well, that's silly. That's just like silly. You laugh,
Sure.
You laugh, which is the correct response. No one's going to take this seriously. No harm is going to be done to glasses wearing people because of this.
Sure.
And I just don't see the negative aspect of it. It's just silliness. Now, I suppose you could say, yeah, but like people with DID are very rare and already somewhat stigmatized.
Yeah.
And therefore this could kind of smear them with that brush of prejudice. I just don't believe that people are that stupid, though. Like I'm serious. Like, I don't believe that you could watch a movie like this and then and then walk away from it with your conclusion being like, yeah, people with DID are going to turn into monsters. Like
right.
no person thought that. So
or are sufficiently crazy to be actively harmful to other people and should be ostracized by the community. Like I definitely do not think that is the read of this story. And I think you could actually make an argument that the failure on behalf of their therapist is being too caught up in the supernatural element of it and not focused enough on the real medical health issues that they are suffering through their disorder.
I like that a lot. I like that a lot because there are so many moments actually in the movie where you are wanting to yell at the screen like, why are you so calm right now? Like like you know that something is wrong, and now you have gone into his home, or even just you're sitting alone with him in your home.
Yeah.
And you suspect that something is amiss. You suspect something could be extremely amiss. Like you're not really taking this situation seriously. The moment at which she starts to take it seriously is far too late, and even then, the action she takes is basically to just go open the door, which isn't going to help anybody. Like she just like confirms, like, oh, yeah, he's kidnapped people. This is real bad, and then there's nothing she can do beyond that point.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, you could make an argument, and I don't know if the movie supports this, that like the source of the legend of the beast might come from her fascination in that specific aspect of them, right? This idea, because the thing that she's most about, the thing that she talks about the most is not that these are separate people that are suffering, but that this suffering creates something different. The thing that she's most interested in, we see her give the speech over Skype to that school, and the thing that she's most interested in is the fact that two people can write at the same time with different handwritings. She's most interested in the expanse and the power of the brain and the power of or the mystery of what is beyond ourselves, right? That is the thing she's most interested in. She's not interested in treating these people. And that, I think the movie confirms this because she admits that her failure was two girls like straight up walked up to him and accosted him, which is, this is the one part of the movie where the writing makes me go, really? Because so the situation here is that two teenage girls walk up to the strange man working at the zoo, grab his hands, and place them on their breasts, is what the movie's saying, right? And that's a very traumatic experience for him as someone who was clearly abused as a child. And that's what kind of triggers this cascading of failure where the less desired entity seize control. That's what happens. I don't know if I buy that actually happening in real life, but maybe I'm just too optimistic about humanity.
That didn't stick out to me particularly.
Do people do that?
I mean, I know that flashing is a thing.
Sure, that's a little different.
I can buy that's I can buy that's a thing that could potentially happen.
I suppose. I mean, you get people that are just like daring each other to do stuff and expand. Yeah, I suppose. I mean, I'm not going to let it destroy my liking of the movie.
Like one thing about this is sort of a problem in Red Dragon, actually, because in Red Dragon the character is supposed to be extremely unattractive, except he's a bodybuilder. But in this movie, it's James McAvoy, and he's a bodybuilder, so he's super attractive. And the movie doesn't pretend that's not true.
True, yeah, that's true. That's true.
So I could kind of believe that would happen for that reason. You know.
Yeah. Anyway, so the beyond that quibble, that doesn't matter, but the thing that she says is, we moved past this too quickly. This clearly made you uncomfortable. It clearly upset you. You were upset about it for days, and we just moved past it. And I think that's her failing, is she's so into the other stuff. Like the second, you're absolutely right that the second she realizes that Dennis, the pedophile personality, is in control again, is when you contact the authorities.
Yeah.
And you get the legal system involved, because that's no good. That's bad. That's bad for him. That's bad for everyone around him. And she's just kind of so curious about what this could mean and where this could go, the potential with this, that she can't stop it until it's too late.
One thing she says that's interesting, I don't know if I was taking her at face value when she said it, but she said, I think of my patients as my family because I chose not to have a family of my own. And I thought maybe she was just buttering him up there, but in retrospect, I think that was completely honest. And that's part of her unwillingness to kind of believe the worst of him and of the whole situation.
Yeah.
Because she didn't want to believe that it was possible that it could get this bad. And yeah, I agree with what you said about her kind of, this is her pet project. She's fascinated by this idea and by this concept, and wants to prove that it's true and isn't really thinking through the implications of it until it's far too late.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, cool. So, I mean, that's pretty great. What else do we have to talk about here? I feel like there's so much more I want to say, but I don't know. Production design. Let's talk about the production design.
Just the
underground layer.
Oh my God,
is amazing.
So yeah,
it's the detail with the set dressing. Like they built this place to look like 23 different people live in here.
Yeah, because
they do. And
it's so like grungy and authentic and just uncomfortable and frightening. And it's sort of, I don't know, maybe you didn't feel this way, but I almost feel like the way it's shot makes it feel maze-like. You never really get too many shots that tell you are here. If you go that way, you're going to go toward those rooms. If you go this way, you're going to go towards these rooms.
Yeah.
It's all, I think there's no way I could draw out a map of it. Let me put it that way. Even though it's really not that many different locations. Like there's a hallway, there's some lockers on the hallway. There's the cell, there's the bathroom, there's the dining room, there's the bedroom. But maybe if I watched the movie with a pad of paper, I could sketch out a map. But the movie's I think trying to make you feel kind of claustrophobically disoriented.
Yeah, I think so too. I think that the scene geography of that place is not established. And I think it's not established because we have so few wide shots. Mm-hmm. And we don't want wide shots because they want this place to feel cramped. Yeah. So if you go wide, it feels more open. They don't want that. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, with the exception of the long hallway, which is like, I think the lenses that are picked really like pull the hallway longer than it actually is, and like how many doors are on this hallway. I think you're absolutely right. That is what they're going for. They want a place that's both cramped and maze-like. And that is fully achieved. I love it.
I think one of my favorite shots is when he's coming along the ceiling toward her and smashing out the lights as he goes.
The way in which they did that stunt, just the movement he does to hit the light, right?
Yeah.
It is so animalistic. It really is. It's really beautifully done.
It's this sort of lunge, and then when he drops down to the floor, I feel like they're doing something with the frame rate to make it seem just a little bit off.
It feels like they accelerated it, right? Because he does move unnaturally fast there.
Yeah, which works for me. Like even though you pick it out as being unnatural, I love it. It's exactly the kind of creepy and inhuman that you want in that moment.
I agree. I totally agree. I love it.
But yeah, the set design is great. I just want to talk about like the plot at a very meta level, just like the idea that this is sort of a very straightforward kidnapping plot at its core. Yeah. Like you have the kidnapping victims, and then you have the naive character who can be reasoned with and that they're trying to manipulate into escaping. And then you have the kind of maybe slightly maternal caretaking character who feels a little bit bad that this is all necessary, but what are you going to do? Mm-hmm. And then you have she's sort of the good cop, and then you have the bad cop, which is Dennis. Except the clever twist here is that all of those personalities are the same person.
Yeah.
And I think that's really, really awesome.
Yeah, that is true. It is a very kind of standard like group kidnapping thing.
I'm thinking like there's a few examples of movies like this where kind of all those archetypes are present.
Panic Room is one that jumped into my head.
Kind of exactly the first one I was thinking about. But also like Inside Man comes to mind.
Sure,
which is not kidnapping, but I guess just anytime people are
hostage,
are kind of hostage. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree, and I know we've talked about McAvoy a lot, but his Hedwig performance I think is the best one. That is such a fascinating performance there, because like I just like the way he talks about how the other ones think he's stupid is just so well done. I don't know.
Yeah.
I can't even pick out what specifically is great about it. It's just so well done. He's the one you really feel the most.
Yeah.
I mean, you feel like you're talking to a child. It's remarkable.
Right. It's an authentic, I get it. This is really a kid whose feelings are hurt and who is self-conscious and has low self-esteem, and it's this I don't know how old McAvoy is, but this man is completely inhabiting this character. It's great.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and when you see his window and he like does the paper to open the window, closed. It's a really wonderful moment there that I think the movie sells really well. Just like this bit of hope that's dashed away.
Yeah.
One of the things, speaking of like your standard kind of kidnapping plot thing, I as far as characterization goes, I really like how Casey like immediately recognizes the weak link, and like we see her go to manipulation and confusion like so fast.
Yeah.
And I just think that's a great way of reinforcing her character as a person who this isn't new, who's experienced this before, who's probably had to manipulate her uncle before in some way, right? Who's like in order to get through the day, to see the weak point in a person and use it to survive.
Absolutely, yeah.
It is something that she seems like she just rolls with it immediately.
Yeah.
And I just think that like this is not things that the movie has to state. It's not like it's just there. It's just there right in front of you, and it's assured, and I really, really like it.
Yeah, I mean, from a screenwriting perspective, that's something we've sort of been talking about the whole time, but not necessarily specifically. Just like, for example, toward the very beginning, there's a bit of conflict between the girls where one of them wants to attack him, and she's just like, no, I'm not going to go along with that, because I know it's not going to work. And at the time, you don't know why she's saying that. In fact, me being again first time watching it, I was like, she's just kind of like, maybe it would work. Like, try it, try to rush him. And she's like, no, that wouldn't work. Like he's huge, he's really strong, and he's planned the situation out. We wouldn't stand a chance. And that's like you said, it's because she's experienced with this exact situation of being victimized by a physically overpowering man, and she knows that that's not the angle. The angle is manipulation, and as soon as she notices that opportunity, she goes for it. And then beyond that point, the conflict between the girls vanishes because they realize they're all on the same page. They just have different perspectives on how to go about solving the problem.
Sure, yeah. I really like the pee on yourself part too.
Yeah, me too.
Because again, that's like, and I don't know if that's specifically like, this is what I learned, someone will leave me alone if I piss my pants, or if it's just like she picked up on the fact that he was OCD like immediately and went to, and knew that that would drive him away. And it could be both, I don't know.
I like it being the latter, just that she has such acuity that she's able to pick out weaknesses in people to manipulate.
Yeah. Great stuff. Really great stuff. Love it.
Yeah.
Love it.
My first note on this movie was that the dad who's,
I see you just wrote dad and I didn't know what that meant.
it just means like that actor, I've never seen him in anything else, but I was just like, man, they must have just put out a casting call for just the most likable son of a bitch in the world, because like you just love this guy, and then like as soon as you realize like, oh, he's probably gonna get killed, oh no, of course he didn't actually get killed, surprisingly. I thought he was dead, but his daughter's dead, so that's sad. But anyway, I was just kind of like blown away by how charismatic this actor was for his 80 seconds of screen time.
And you were talking not about Casey's father, you were talking about the dad of Claire who gets knocked on the head.
Correct.
And as they get kidnapped.
Yes.
Yeah, no, I agree. He was fun. It's a really great opening to the movie. I really like that whole thing. And that's one of the moments where I think the movie felt a little Visit inspired, because it's goes into handheld camera as he approaches the dad and like your now point of view shot of the kidnapper. And I just thought that was a really nice touch because Shyamalan doesn't use handheld very often. He's very much a tripod or a tracking shot or whatever those are called.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? He's not a handheld type of cinematographer. Like that's not the type of framing he likes very often, but he uses it sparingly in this movie. And in the back of my head, I'm like, oh, I bet he feels more comfortable with this because of The Visit. And so he's going to use it where it works.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think he's gotten better over time at action, for lack of a better word. Like,
sure,
probably one of the weakest elements of The Visit, for example, was the scenes where I think it's fine when you're seeing the creepy monsters lurking in the background. I think it doesn't work very well when the creepy monsters were like actively chasing her in the woods. In The Visit, what did I just say? The Village is what I meant. Sorry.
I was gonna say.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then The Visit was definitely a lot better. So everything I just said was screwed up. What I was trying to say was The Village, I did not really buy. I did not think that the action scenes were particularly well shot. The Visit, I thought they were. I thought that was great. And then this movie, it's fantastic. Every moment of like physical tension and physical altercation is perfect. It's the best of all of his movies by far, I think, in that regard.
Yeah, I totally agree. I liked it a whole lot. Yeah. So to kind of like bring this thing full circle, this is the 10th movie we've done of Shyamalan's. It is the second to last movie we're going to be talking about of his. Where does this fit in his filmography? Like, I mean, like looking at trends amongst movies, he's definitely interested in people that have gone through things and gone through trauma, and looking at what is on the other side of that. That seems to be a constant refrain in his films. He likes exploring mental health issues and how people succumb to their worst instincts and how people can get beyond them. That is definitely something he enjoys doing. This feels very at a pace with like the type of story he wants to tell.
Yeah, I think that it's one of the ones that fits very consistently with his sort of style of storytelling, where it's very theme driven. Obviously, we have this idea of trauma manifesting and changing people is physically represented by the fantasy conceit of the story. Mm-hmm. So once again, it's sort of the idea of he seems to start with some idea that he wants to get across, and then he crafts the characters and the plot around that. And I think that's what he's doing here, which I think is his strength. That's why I love him as a storyteller, and that's kind of my favorite thing about him, honestly. Mm-hmm. And like you just said, if anything, the fact that I'd say it's a bit different in the following ways. First of all, I'm trying to think if any of his previous, I guess the only previous film with a female protagonist was The Village.
Yeah, I'd say The Village. I guess The Visit, technically the daughter is the protagonist.
That's true. And Lady in the Water,
it's
fairly prominent, but not the protagonist.
Like Cleveland's definitely the protagonist of that one.
I agree with that. I'm not. I guess I was trying to determine if there was a pattern there, maybe a slight pattern, but I think what's one interesting thing about this movie that sets it apart, I think, for many of them, is that it has a clear antagonist. The only other one that I can think of that has a clear antagonist would be Unbreakable. Tell me if you can think of any other ones.
I mean, even that antagonist is not revealed until the very end of the movie. So
that's true.
I mean, like the guy he fights at the end of that movie isn't really the antagonist of the story.
Right.
It's Mr. Glass.
Mr. Glass. But I mean, Mr. Glass, and I think that's one thing that this movie has in common with Unbreakable, actually, is that the movie is very sympathetic to the antagonist. This movie actually focuses way more on Mr. Split, the Horde.
It's called the Horde.
The Horde than it does on is her name Claire? I don't remember names. Casey. Yeah. Like it spends more time with him than it spends with her.
Yeah,
and that's fine for the kind of movie that it is. I don't think he's the protagonist. I did think about that for a while. I was like, is he actually the protagonist of the movie? I don't think he's the protagonist. I think he's definitely the antagonist. He's just very, very prominent antagonist, which is pretty unusual for these movies.
Yeah. I mean, I think he's sympathetic in that there's parts of him that are good in there. Like underneath all of this is Kevin Wendell Crumb, who's just this guy who went through hell and then created these personalities to survive it.
Yeah. I mean, he heroically, he's like, just kill me, please, just kill me.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So what did you think? I think it's very interesting that the movie plays it as a reveal that they're underneath the Philadelphia Zoo. And like animals obviously play a large part in this movie, right? Like the hunting of the bucks with Casey's story. There's moments where animal facts are like the beast is, I think the news report says, is like a personality cobbled together from the different animals in the zoo. But I just thought it was interesting that it kind of masks where they are, or it masks where he works, right? Because he's talking to the psychiatrist at the very beginning of the movie, and she's like, your place of employment. Like they're trying to hide that he works at the zoo, and then it's like a reveal as they get out of the tunnels, and it's like, oh, there's animals. Oh, what? And I always thought that's one of my only complaints about the movie is I'm like, why are you playing this as if it's like the zoo? I'm just like, I don't like. I get the animal symbols, but I don't like. Nothing is revealed by we've been under a zoo the whole time. I don't know.
I agree that it's. So this is like visually and symbolically what it says to me is at the beginning of the movie, she is a doe. She is fearful, skittish, aware. She is embodying the traits that her father described deer as having of taking cover, hiding, literally covering herself, hiding, moving around in the dim light, crepuscular. At the end of the movie, she is a big cat. She's walking out of the cages. She's walking among the predators. She's now comfortable among them. Yeah. Or maybe she even is one. Maybe she's flipped to the other side. She sees herself that way now.
Yeah, I mean,
something like that. Like that's the best I can kind of do. Is that maybe it's not doing a reveal per se. Maybe it's doing a dramatic parallel.
Or the reveal is character focused rather than setting focused. Yeah, I like that. I agree with you, and that makes me like it a little bit more. I don't know. Like it just felt really weird to me. Like, would it have been like? Would that imagery have been damaged if we like knew they were at the zoo? Like, it feels like there's a part in this movie where it matters to someone else, to something that's a zoo, and they want to hide that from us. I don't know.
I agree. There was no real need to hide that because like the fact that there's this, the cage that she's in at the end, like there's no reason for a cage like that to exist anywhere except a prison or a zoo.
Right.
So I don't see how it would have hurt us for us to be like, oh, they're in a zoo, so there's going to be cages. Sure.
Yeah, I mean, I love it being in a zoo. Like, right, yeah. It's perfect. It just for exactly the reason you said, because she's a caged animal and she's out of her cage. Like, it's beautiful. It's perfect. But yeah, I just don't. I guess maybe by masking that and playing it as a reveal, the moment lands more. The beat lands more. Because you're like, oh, it's a zoo. Oh, she was. I get it. I don't know. I don't know. This is really quibbling in a otherwise just near perfect movie. Because I'm just looking for something bad to say at this point.
Yeah, I mean, I guess if I had one question, I would be like, what was the specific intent behind hiding that information? Because I agree. Sure. I'm not sure.
Yeah, because and I think I need to stop complaining about this. It doesn't matter. But the reason why I noticed it this time is because the way Dr. Fletcher like skirts around saying the place in her dialogue stuck out to me this time. Because I'm like, it just felt a little it's like when you're writing a script and you're like, oh, I want to save that. So we have to we can't just have people talk in the way they normally do. We have to have them talk around it in a way that doesn't notice it. And I noticed it. It's like I think she says your place of employment. Like how, yeah. I spoke to the people at your place of employment and they say everything's going well. And I was just like, that's not how a human would say that.
You mean the zoo?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I know what you mean.
Yeah. But again, tiny quibble in an otherwise very, very, very good movie.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
All right. Is that it? Is that all we got?
I think so.
I want to watch this movie again right now. I want to go do that.
All right.
It's so good.
See you later.
I guess we got to finish this show first.
Okay. Sure.
We're going to be back in a couple weeks, though, with Glass. So we're going to wrap this whole thing up. And then I think we'll finish up Glass, and then we'll have a whole nice long conversation about Shyamalan and what we learned. And then should we start like asking people to send in submissions for what directors they think we should do next?
Sure.
It feels like it's getting to be about that time. So yeah, if you're listening to this, what director do you want us to do next? You can email us at doofmedia@gmail.com or talk to us on our, what is that thing? It's a Discord. Thank you. Or leave a comment if you're listening on YouTube. Let us know, what director do you want us to explore next? And we'll compile those and make a decision from that. But that is Split. One to go. Doof. All right, Matt, before we go today, I want to talk about not a horror movie, but a movie that is horrifying.
Yeah, it's very, very meta.
So this is a little bit of old news. This broke last week, but we didn't get a chance to talk about it last week, so I thought it'd be fun to talk about it now. The story was that there's a movie called Finding Jack being created. It is a Vietnam War era drama. And the directors of this movie have decided that they are going to cast James Dean as the lead of the role of the film. James Dean, who died in 1955 and has been dead since then. So, I mean, the reason this is interesting to me, Matt, is because I feel like we've been talking about this future for a long time.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like this has been, like, when we look out and we see how CG technology is improving and, like, we see how the de-aging software is getting really, really good. We had the young Carrie Fisher in Rogue One, and I think the Grand Admiral Tarkin was...
Yeah. That wasn't even de-aging. That was just a CGI character, basically. And that made a degree of sense because that was a character who they needed to be in the movie for plot reasons. Yeah. This has no justification, no imaginable justification.
Yeah.
And that's what's interesting about it is I just other than being for PR, right? Other than being for isn't it cool? Isn't it interesting? We can do this now.
Yeah, I mean, I love their their press release though. It's like we searched all around the world for the perfect actor, and then we decided it was James Dean.
and that's ridiculous because like I happen to think Tom Cruise is a talented actor. You could argue that maybe he's one dimensional. I think he's pretty good. Whatever. The point is, if you're gonna say, instead of having real Tom Cruise in this movie, we're going to have CGI young Tom Cruise. Tom Cruise is not actually affiliated with this movie. We're just using his likeness. I would just be like, but that's not Tom Cruise. Like the thing that I like about Tom Cruise is his talent, not his face.
Right. I mean, and like it's going to be another actor is performing his voice. And it'll be a combination of full CGI, and they will use, scenes and footage that they have of James Dean from back in the 50s to create this composite person. And like, it's horrifying to me because we always talked about this, like, in the future, they're not going to need to cast actors. Who do you want to play this? You can be anyone at any age. You can just cast them in your movie. Yeah. And I mean, this is where we're at. We're really close to this technology, and I still think the technology has some ways to go because even even some of the de-aging stuff, I still a little uncanny valley for me. I mean, some people don't notice. Like, some people didn't mind Leia or Admiral Tarkin in Rogue One at all. I was very uncomfortable. I thought it was uncomfortable. I didn't like it.
But we're like 5 years away from that being perfect, maximum.
Sure.
So did you see this thing released this week? So you know how for a while they've had, machine learning sets where you could put in like hours of somebody's voice and it would simulate their voice basically? Mm-hmm. Okay, well, now they have it where you can do it with 5 seconds of audio.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So we're on this slope. It's not flattening out. We're getting there. We're getting there really soon. So it's no longer a science fiction consideration. They're literally doing it. Maybe it won't look as great as they think it will. It's gonna look okay, and then it's only gonna look better after that. And then then we get to that. I mean, I don't know. Is it horrifying to think that, setting aside the James Dean issue, at a certain point you can just make a perfectly realistic looking movie with no human actors?
Right. Like you don't even need to build a copy of an existing person.
Yeah.
You could just literally create a person full cloth.
Yeah.
I mean, that part bothers me less. I mean, I don't like it because I think the human element of filmmaking is important. And I think I'm sorry, as it exists today, I just don't think there's a computer that can do what James McAvoy did in that movie we just watched. And I think it's going to be a while before they'll be able to get that. So I just think that's important. But yeah, when we start talking about real people and real dead people, that's when it gets really skeevy to me, because like you don't have any say anymore, right? Like you're literally a version of you is being created. Words are going to be put in your mouth and you have no control over that because you're dead. And like, yes, his family has signed off on this. His family, they bought the rights from his family, which I don't know if you could get. I don't know if you should get to do that.
Yeah, that seems weird. Yeah, the idea that your family owns the rights to your likeness, like, no, I own the rights to my likeness.
Yeah, that's going in the grave with me.
Yeah.
You can't put me in something unless I tell you can.
Right.
And after I die, that goes away.
Because think how upsetting it would be for someone to use your likeness for something like that when you're not dead without your permission.
Oh yeah, you'd be horrified. Yeah.
Yeah, it would be invasive. It'd be violating. It would be upsetting. And then they make money off of it, right? I mean, I guess in this scenario, your family gets the money. Okay.
Sure.
Cool, I guess.
Family that have probably never met you because you died
over 50 years ago. 60
years ago. Yeah, I mean, I don't know, man. Like, it's just, here's the funniest thing about this whole thing. So this came out last week. Obviously, the internet did what everyone knew the internet was going to do, which is like, whoa, this is fucked up. And then the directors came out with a statement that was like, we didn't know that was going to happen. We didn't do this as a gimmick. And I'm like, yeah, come on, at least be honest. Like you do not cast James Dean in your movie. Yeah, like it's so like no one would care. Like this is going to be a tiny independent Vietnam War drama that nobody probably would have heard of until they cast James Dean in it. And now everyone's talking about it. Like, obviously this was a marketing ploy. Yes, 100% it was a marketing ploy. You were going to spend millions of dollars to create a CGI character where you could have just hired an actor. But believe me, there are plenty of actors out there that are probably good enough to star in your movie that are way cheaper than a CGI James Dean. But no, you decided to go that way. Yeah.
It seems highly disingenuous to me.
And I mean, like, this is just the beginning. The company that's doing this has literally said, oh, yeah, baby, this is just the start. Look, and they gave you a list. Betty Page, Burt Reynolds, Andre the Giant, Lou Gehrig, Maya Angelou.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, we're doing this, baby. This is what's happening.
Oh, my God. That physically hurt me.
So it's a company called Worldwide XR. And they hold and represent the rights for more than 400 celebrities, athletes, and sports teams.
Always wanted to see Maya Angelou in a film.
Right. I mean, they could do whatever they want with her. Like, it's just, it's insane. It's insane.
I mean, the true value of this is going to be making characters or making actors do horrible things that they never would have consented to.
Right. I mean, imagine your job is in the world is I represent dead people and I make money off of them without their consent. It's fucking nuts. It's so nuts. So that's what we got to look forward to. I mean, I really think this is one of those things where we need our governments of the world to go, hang on, hang on. Before we move on with this, we gotta talk about this because something has to be done. We need some kind of rule around this before it gets out of hand.
I mean, I'm fine with somebody being able to sell their likeness, but taking a man's likeness who could not possibly have had any understanding that this would happen seems a little bit weird.
If I, Scott Daly, in 2019, knowing about the existence of this technology, sign a piece of paper that says, yes, after I die, feel free to do whatever the fuck you want with my image, that's a whole different story, right?
Yeah.
That is someone conscious. And although, frankly, I still think that agreement should expire at some point. That shouldn't just get to exist into perpetuity, right? But something like this, yeah. I mean, like, there's no way. He's a 24-year-old kid in 1955 that didn't even know what a computer was. Like, there's just no way they could have ever given consent for something like this.
Yeah. So insane.
Hooray. That's the future. Can't wait. The movie is going to be so good. So everyone go see Finding Jack starring James Dean. Do we want to start taking bets on whether or not this movie is actually going to come out? Because I think that the backlash to this has been so huge that if I'm an investor in this movie, I'm like, wait a minute. Maybe we shouldn't do this.
I think I'd want to read up about the situation before placing a bet, but definitely a possibility that you're right. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. All right.
Yeah. It seems right that this is happening just as we have entered the future of Blade Runner.
Yeah, that's true. It is November 2019.
Yep.
It's Blade Runner time. All right, guys, that is all we had for you this week. If you have any opinions on Split or on James Dean or anything else we talked about today, you can reach out to us via email at doofmedia@gmail.com or over on our Twitter account at doofmedia. Remember to send in your ideas for what directors you'd like us to cover next.
Yeah. If you're not already subscribed to this podcast, we encourage you to do so and ensure you never miss an episode. You can find us on iTunes, Stitcher, YouTube, Google Play, and pretty much anywhere else podcasts can be found.
And you can find this and all of our shows over at doofmedia.com. And we are doing our monthly Doof and Chill session this Saturday night at 9:30 Central Time. And that is something that people that pledge to us on Patreon get to see. Matt, we're doing the Tingleverse.
Yeah,
right?
Which I still know almost nothing about.
I don't know, but I'm playing a unicorn and I'm pretty excited about it.
I'm just going to be as ridiculous as possible. So.
Yeah, and if you want to see that is something that is available to our $5 donors and higher at Patreon. So you can head on over to our Patreon account. That's patreon.com/doofmedia. Pledge $1 or pledge $5 so you can see me be a bad boy unicorn and see that and see all the other bonus content and great exclusive stuff we have for our patrons. We really appreciate those of you that donate to us and keep us making stuff. We really, really, really appreciate that. So thank you, everyone. And come play a sexy role-playing game with us.
Also, please consider rating and reviewing the Doofcast on Apple Podcasts. Every review helps us get more exposure and introduces new people to the content that we make here.
All right, guys, we will see you next week when we are doing another one of our patron-produced episodes. I believe we're doing a couple of short stories this time around. What is the name of that author? I totally forgot his name.
Ted Chiang?
Yes. We're going to do a couple Ted Chiang short stories. He's the guy who wrote the short story that eventually became Arrival, which is a movie we've done an episode on and liked a lot. So looking forward to that conversation.
Yeah, I'm very fond of him as a writer. So yeah, me too.
All right, guys, we will see you all then. Have a good weekend. That's weird. I never end the show like that.
My name is Doof, and you'll do what I say. My name is Doof, and you'll do what I say.